My wife introduced me to her uncle, the son of a bank president. He and his parents made fun of me. The first time I realized my wife was ashamed of me, she was smiling. That was the strange part. She stood beside me beneath a chandelier the size of a small car, one hand resting lightly against my arm, smiling at a room full of people who had spent the evening talking about private jets, investment portfolios, and vacation homes. Then her uncle looked at my shoes. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked down. Then he looked back at my face. "Those are interesting," he said. I glanced at my shoes. They were black, polished, and 9 years old. "They're comfortable," I said. He smiled. "Of course they are." His mother laughed softly into her champagne glass. My wife squeezed my arm. Not affectionately. As a warning. I looked at her. She avoided my eyes. 5 minutes later, her uncle introduced me to his father, the president of a major regional bank, and the first thing the older man asked was, "So what exactly do you do?" "I'm a civil engineer." He paused. "Employed?" I almost laughed. "No. I run my own structural consulting firm." His eyebrows rose. That single word carried more judgment than a paragraph could have. Then his wife leaned toward my wife and said, "You never told us she was self-employed." My wife smiled. "I mentioned it." "No, darling," the woman replied. "You said she was between positions." I looked at my wife. She finally met my eyes. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled again. "Let's get you another drink." I followed her across the room. I didn't know it yet, but by midnight, my marriage would be standing on the edge of a cliff. And within 6 months, the people laughing at my old shoes would be sitting across a conference table asking me for help. The irony was almost perfect. But I didn't know that yet. My name is Claire Morgan. I'm 38 years old, a civil engineer, and for 11 years I had built my life around one principle my father taught me when I was a child. Never confuse money with worth. My father repaired elevators. My mother worked as a school librarian. We lived in a small house outside Pittsburgh where the basement flooded every spring, and the heating system made a sound like a dying tractor. We weren't poor. We simply didn't have money to waste. My father used to say that a person should know the difference. Money buys comfort, he'd tell me while fixing something at the kitchen table. Character buys respect. I remembered those words often during my marriage, especially after meeting my wife's family. My wife, Vanessa, grew up very differently. Her father owned several commercial properties. Her mother had never worked outside the home. They weren't billionaires, but they lived in a world where a bad investment meant losing $50,000, not deciding which utility bill could wait until Friday. Vanessa had always been fascinated by that world. She loved expensive restaurants, designer clothing, exclusive clubs, people with important last names. When we met, I thought she simply enjoyed beautiful things. I didn't understand how much she wanted to be accepted by the people who had them. We met at a university engineering conference. Vanessa was there because she was helping organize a business networking event. I was there presenting a project about low-cost structural reinforcement for older buildings. She stayed after my presentation. "You made concrete sound romantic," she said. I laughed. "I'll put that on my resume." She smiled. I was serious. That was Vanessa. Warm, funny, confident. At least, that's who she was with me. We dated for 2 years. Then we married. The first few years were good. Really good. We rented a small apartment. We cooked together. We traveled when we could afford it. Vanessa knew I was building my own consulting firm from almost nothing. She used to sit beside me at the kitchen table while I worked late. "You'll make it," she'd say. I believed her. And eventually I did. My company grew slowly. I didn't become wealthy overnight. There were no dramatic investments. No lottery tickets. No misterias inheritance. Just years of working 12-hour days, building relationships with contractors, solving problems other engineers didn't want, and refusing jobs that required me to compromise professional standards. By the time I was 37, my company had 12 employees. We specialized in structural assessments for older commercial buildings. It wasn't glamorous, but it was profitable. More importantly, it was mine. Vanessa's attitude changed around then. At first, I thought she was proud of me. Then I noticed something. She never mentioned my company around her friends. If someone asked what I did, she'd say, "Claire works in construction." Not engineering. Not consulting. Construction. The first time I ignored it. The second time, I corrected her privately. "You know I'm a structural engineer." She rolled her eyes. "I know. Then why didn't you say it?" "Because nobody cares about technical titles at dinner." I laughed. "Okay." She kissed my cheek. "Don't overthink everything." I didn't. Until the invitation arrived. It was embossed on thick cream paper. Vanessa's uncle, Richard Hale, was hosting a private dinner at the Harrington Hotel. I had heard about Richard. Everyone had. He was the son of Edward Hale, the president of First Commonwealth Bank. Richard had made a fortune in private equity and commercial real estate. He had also become something of a celebrity in Vanessa's family. Vanessa talked about him constantly. Richard just bought a building downtown. Richard knows everyone. Richard said my design work could be much bigger. Richard thinks we should start investing. I asked her once why his opinion mattered so much. Because he understands how the world works. I smiled. I understand how buildings work. She didn't laugh. The night of the dinner, Vanessa spent nearly 2 hours getting ready. She changed dresses 3 times. Then she stood in front of the mirror. "Do I look sophisticated?" "You look beautiful." She sighed. "That's not what I asked." I looked at her reflection. "You look sophisticated." "Thank you." She turned toward me. "And please." She hesitated. "Please what?" "Just try to fit in tonight." The sentence stayed with me. What does that mean? Nothing. Vanessa. She sighed. My family can be judgmental. Eventually. Just don't talk about money. I don't. And don't bring up the company unless someone asks. Ist her. Why? Because Richard may ask about what I want to do professionally. Okay. And if he asks what you do, just say you're an engineer. I am. Don't start explaining your company. I smiled faintly. Got it. She kissed me. Thank you. At the hotel, everything was exactly as I expected. Too polished. Too expensive. Too quiet. Servers moved around the room without making noise. People laughed softly. Nobody ever seemed surprised by anything. Then Richard arrived. He was in his early 50s, tall, silver-haired, and perfectly dressed. He shook my hand. Claire. Nice to meet you. He looked at Vanessa. So this is the wife. Vanessa smiled. Yes. Richard looked at me again. Interesting. I smiled. Thank you. He laughed. I didn't. Dinner began. For the first 20 minutes, everything was pleasant. Then Richard asked about my work. So Claire, Vanessa tells me you're an engineer. That's right. What kind? Structural. He nodded. Do you work for a firm? I own one. His fork stopped. You own a firm? Yes. What size? 12 employees. He leaned back. Not bad. His mother smiled. That's actually quite ambitious. I thanked her. Then his father asked, What's your annual revenue? The table went quiet. I wasn't sure I'd heard correctly. Vanessa shifted beside me. I smiled. I don't usually discuss business finances at dinner. Richard laughed. Smart answer. His father didn't smile. There's nothing wrong with knowing someone's scale. Vanessa whispered, Dad. He waved her off. I was only asking. Then Richard looked at my shoes again. You built this business yourself? Yes. No family connections? No. Interesting. His mother leaned toward Vanessa. Where did you two meet? University. And you married her knowing she wasn't from this world? Vanessa's face tightened. What world? Her mother smiled. You know what I mean. I set down my fork. No, actually. I don't. Richard laughed. Relax, Claire. We're just teasing. I looked around the table. Nobody looked relaxed. Then Richard said something that changed the evening. You know, Vanessa has always had expensive ambitions. Vanessa's face turned red. I don't know what you're talking about. Richard smiled. Don't you? He looked at me. She used to tell us she wanted to marry someone who could give her a certain lifestyle. I felt Vanessa's hand tighten around her napkin. Richard. He shrugged. That's what she said. I looked at my wife. Is that true? She didn't answer. Richard's mother laughed. Young people say silly things. I looked back at my plate. Suddenly I wasn't hungry. The dinner continued. But something had changed. The room seemed colder. After dessert, Vanessa pulled me aside. You were too sensitive. Your uncle just told me you wanted to marry someone for money. He was joking. He looked at my shoes 3 times. She sighed. Please don't make this into something. I'm not. You are. I looked at her. Why did you ask me to fit in? She crossed her arms. Because I didn't want tonight to be awkward. It became awkward when they started insulting me. They weren't insulting you. Then what was it? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. That silence told me more than an argument could have. We drove home without speaking. The next morning, Vanessa acted as though nothing had happened. I didn't. I went to work. That afternoon, one of my project managers walked into my office. Claire, we have a problem. What kind? The Riverside contract. I looked up. What about it? The financing partner pulled out. Why? He didn't say. I frowned. Riverside was a major restoration project. Losing the financing could delay the entire contract. Who was the lender? First Commonwealth. My stomach tightened. Which division? Commercial. I leaned back. Get me the paperwork. An hour later, I had it. The financing wasn't cancelled. It had been placed on hold. The reason given was concerns regarding project risk. That made no sense. Our structural assessment had been completed months earlier. I called the bank. They refused to discuss it. Then I received an email from Richard. Claire. Good meeting you last night. I heard about Riverside. Maybe we should talk. I stared at the screen. I didn't respond. The next morning, Richard called. You got my email? Yes. You should let me help. How? Your company is growing faster than your experience. I almost laughed. I've been running it for 8 years. Exactly. What do you want? I want you to understand something. He paused. People like us survive by knowing who controls the money. I said nothing. You're good at engineering. Thank you. But you don't understand finance. Perhaps. That's why you need people like me. I looked out the window. Are you offering financing? I'm offering protection. At what cost? He laughed. You really are your father's daughter. I didn't know what he meant. Then he said, think about it. The call ended. I called Evelyn, my attorney. She listened. Don't accept anything. Why? Because he's testing you. Testing me for what? Control. That word stayed in my head. 2 days later, Vanessa came home with a proposal. Richard can help us. Us. Your company. I don't need his help. You do. I looked at her. Why? Because he can open doors. I've opened doors. Not those doors. What does that mean? She sat down. Richard thinks you could make much more money if you stop being stubborn. Is that what you think? She didn't answer. I waited. Finally she said, I think you're capable of more. I smiled. More than what? More than this. She gestured toward the house. I looked around. We had a comfortable home. A paid-off car. Savings. No debt beyond the mortgage. This isn't enough for you? It's not about enough. It sounds like it is. She looked away. I don't want to spend my life pretending we're rich when we're not. That hurt. Not because we were poor. Because she knew exactly what she was saying. I stood. Do you want a different life? She whispered, maybe. I nodded. Then say it. She looked up. I don't know. I walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of Richard. Because I was beginning to realize Vanessa had been changing long before I noticed. The next week, strange things happened. A subcontractor suddenly demanded revised terms. A client delayed payment. A competitor started spreading rumors that my firm was financially unstable. Then one of my employees received an anonymous message warning them that the company might collapse. I called a meeting. Who has access to our financial information? My operations manager listed the usual people. Then she stopped. Vanessa. I looked at her. Why would she have access? She signed the preliminary partnership documents. I froze. What partnership documents? She looked confused. The ones Richard sent. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I had never signed them. I asked to see them. The next morning, Evelyn reviewed them. Her expression changed. Claire. What? This isn't a partnership. What is it? A control agreement. I read the pages. Richard's investment company would receive a significant equity stake in my firm in exchange for financing. But the real problem was hidden in the management clause. If certain financial targets weren't met, Richard's company could appoint a managing director. He could effectively take control. And there was another clause. My wife had signed as an authorized representative. Without my knowledge. I stared at the signature. It was Vanessa's. Evelyn looked at me. Did you authorize this? No. Then we have a serious problem. I sat back. Everything suddenly made sense. The jokes. The bank pressure. The offer. The insults. They weren't trying to help me. They were trying to make me feel small enough to accept their help. And Vanessa wasn't standing beside me. She was helping them. I didn't confront her. Instead, I started documenting everything. Emails. Contracts. Calls. Financial records. Dates. Names. I contacted every client affected by the delays and explained the facts without mentioning my suspicions. I hired an independent accountant. I requested a forensic review. And I did something Richard didn't expect. I stopped reacting. He expected me to panic. I didn't. 3 weeks later, Evelyn called. There's something else. What? The bank's hold on Riverside was initiated after someone contacted them claiming your company was experiencing undisclosed financial difficulties. Ooh, we don't know yet. But I have a suspicion. She was quiet. Then let's prove it. The investigation took another month. We found the source. A consultant working with Richard had contacted several institutions and implied my company was overleveraged. The claims were false. Worse, they had been timed to make my company appear unstable just before Richard offered financing. It wasn't an accident. It was pressure. I finally understood the strategy. Make me look weak. Offer rescue. Take control. Then let me believe I had chosen it. But Richard had made one mistake. He assumed I would be desperate. I wasn't. My company had enough reserves to survive the delays. I simply hadn't wanted to spend them. Now I did. I refinanced through a smaller independent lender. I canceled every relationship connected to Richard. And I called a meeting with Vanessa. She came into the office wearing a cream coat and carrying a designer handbag. She looked around. You wanted to talk? Yes. About what? I slid a folder across the desk. She looked at it. What is this? Your signature. Her face changed. I don't understand. You signed an agreement giving Richard control of my company. She went pale. That's not what he told me. What did he tell you? That it was temporary. Did you read it? I trusted him. Ist her. That's interesting. What? You didn't trust me. She looked down. I continued. You told him my company was failing. I was trying to help. You told him I didn't understand finance. I was worried about you. You told your mother I was holding you back. She started crying. I was confused. I remained silent. She wiped her face. Claire, I never wanted to hurt you. Then why did you sign? She didn't answer. That was the answer. A week later, Richard demanded a meeting. I agreed. He arrived with his parents. They entered the conference room as if they owned it. Richard sat at the head of the table. I sat opposite him. His father looked at me. This has gone too far. I smiled. Agreed. Richard placed a document on the table. You violated the spirit of our agreement. There was no agreement. Your wife signed it. She wasn't authorized. His father leaned forward. You should be careful. I am. Richard smiled. You think because you've hired lawyers you're suddenly powerful? No. Then what do you think? I looked at him. I think you made a mistake. His smile disappeared. What mistake? You assumed I needed you. His mother laughed. Everyone needs someone. I nodded. Sometimes. Then I opened my folder. But not everyone needs to be owned. Silence. I handed them the first document. Then another. Then another. The independent audit. The bank communications. The false financial claims. The consultant's emails. The unauthorized agreement. The timeline. Richard's father read silently. His expression changed. Richard reached for one page. Where did you get this? From records I was legally entitled to access. He looked at his father. His father didn't look back. For the first time, Richard seemed uncertain. I continued. I don't intend to destroy your family. His mother scoffed. How generous. I'm serious. I closed the folder. I want the false statements corrected. I want the unauthorized agreement withdrawn. And I want every person involved to stop interfering with my company. Richard laughed. And if we don't? I looked directly at him. Then the evidence goes where it needs to go. His father finally spoke. Richard. Richard turned. Enough. Everyone became quiet. His father looked at me. Is everything here accurate? Yes. He read another page. Then another. Finally he closed the folder. I believe it is. Richard stared at him. Dad. You told me she was financially reckless. Richard said nothing. You told me the company was failing. Nothing. You told me she needed our financing. Still nothing. His father looked disappointed. Not at me. At him. Why? Richard's jaw tightened. I was protecting the family. No, his father said quietly. You were protecting your ego. That sentence ended the meeting. Richard's parents left. He stayed behind. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said, You think you've won? I looked at him. No. He frowned. I've protected what I built. You're going to regret humiliating me. I almost smiled. You humiliated yourself. He left. The consequences came quickly. The bank's internal review cleared my company. The false claims were formally corrected. Richard's investment group lost several clients after questions were raised about its methods. He wasn't ruined. I never wanted that. But his reputation changed. People began asking questions. And once people start asking questions, control becomes difficult. Vanessa and I separated. There was no dramatic confrontation. No screaming. No broken furniture. Just paperwork. Silence. And a marriage that had become too heavy to carry. During mediation, Vanessa asked me something. Did you ever love me? I looked at her. Yes. Do you still? I thought for a long time. I love the person I believed you were. She cried. I was afraid. I know. I wanted to belong. I know. Your confidence made me feel small. I swallowed. I never wanted that. I know. She looked down. I thought if we became rich enough, nobody would look down on me again. I nodded slowly. And did it work? She shook her head. No. That was the saddest part. She had spent years chasing the approval of people who never intended to give it. And in doing so, she had pushed away the one person who never asked her to earn her place. Me. Our divorce became final several months later. I kept my company. Vanessa kept her personal assets. The house was sold. We divided everything fairly. There was no revenge in the legal settlement. There didn't need to be. The truth had already done what revenge never could. It had removed the illusion. A year later, I attended a small business conference in Chicago. I was speaking on a panel about restoring older commercial buildings. Afterward, a young engineer approached me. I heard your presentation. Thank you. I'm starting my own firm. Good. I am scared. I smiled. You should be. She laughed. Seriously? Being scared means you understand the stakes. What if people with more money try to push me around? I looked at her. They will. She laughed again. What do I do? Know your numbers. Know your contracts. Keep your records. And never let someone convince you that you need to become smaller, so they can feel bigger. She nodded. That's good advice. I smiled. It took me a while to learn it. That evening, I walked through downtown alone. The city was glowing under the streetlights. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about Vanessa, or Richard, or that dinner, or the way his mother had looked at my shoes. I thought about my father. Money buys comfort. Character buys respect. I finally understood what he meant. Respect isn't something wealthy people give you. It's something you build. Quietly. Over time. Through decisions nobody applauds. Through honesty when lying would be easier. Through refusing shortcuts that would cost you your dignity. Through standing still when someone expects you to panic. I had spent years thinking success meant proving people wrong. It doesn't. Success is waking up one morning and realizing you don't need their approval anymore. Months after the divorce, I received an invitation to a charity event. I almost threw it away. Then I noticed the host. First Commonwealth Bank. I considered declining. Instead, I went. Not because I wanted to see Richard. Because my company had been invited to receive an award for its work restoring historic buildings. I wore a simple black suit. My shoes were the same ones Richard had mocked. 9 years old. Polished. Comfortable. When I entered the ballroom, I saw Richard across the room. He saw me too. His expression changed. He walked over. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he looked down. At my shoes. I smiled. Still interesting? He gave a short laugh. I remember those. So do I. He looked older. Not physically. Just quieter. I owe you an apology. I wasn't expecting that. For what? For the way I treated you. I nodded. Thank you. I was wrong about you. I know. He smiled faintly. You really don't need anyone to tell you you're good, do you? I thought about it. No. He looked at the shoes again. You kept them. They work. He laughed. Of course they do. Then someone called his name. He walked away. I watched him disappear into the crowd. And strangely, I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No anger. Just peace. I walked toward the stage. The lights were bright. People were talking. My name was announced. I stepped forward. As I accepted the award, I looked out at the room. For a second, I remembered that first dinner. The chandelier. The champagne. The laughter. The questions about my money. The way Vanessa had squeezed my arm. The way I had looked down at my old shoes. Back then, I thought those people had power because they had money. I was wrong. They had money. I had something else. I had built something nobody could take from me without my permission. My judgment. My work. My name. My dignity. And most importantly, my ability to walk away. I didn't win because I became richer than them. I won because I stopped measuring myself by their standards. Years later, when people asked me about the story behind my company, I rarely mentioned Vanessa. I never mentioned Richard unless someone specifically asked. I simply said I started small. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. Then I learned. That's all. Because the truth was, the greatest revenge wasn't watching Richard lose influence. It wasn't seeing Vanessa realize what she had sacrificed. It wasn't proving that my company could survive without their money. The greatest revenge was much quieter. It was building a life where none of them mattered. One Saturday morning, I stood in my office overlooking the city. My team was preparing for another major restoration project. Someone had left coffee on my desk. The windows were open. Traffic moved below. My phone buzzed. For a moment, I thought about checking it. Then I didn't. I picked up the coffee instead. Outside, the city kept moving. So did I. And I finally understood something I wish I had known at that dinner years earlier. People who need you to feel small are rarely as powerful as they want you to believe. Sometimes they only look powerful because everyone around them is afraid to stand up. The moment you stop being afraid, the illusion disappears. I never needed to become like them. I never needed their money. I never needed their approval. And I certainly never needed to prove that my old shoes were worth something. They already were. I was the one wearing them. And I had been walking forward the entire time.